It is time. We're finally recapping the 2025 season. The ups, the downs, the good, the bad, the ugly, the exuberation from championships, the heartbreak from teams that should have won championships. We're going to recap that all here on the Dynasty Gambit. What's up, everybody? Happy New Year. We are now in 2026. You know what that means? It's time to get into a bunch of startups. No, I'm just kidding. Not yet. But we're going to kind of go through and recap an eventful 2025 playoffs of fantasy football. I feel like I don't know about you, Ben, but I feel like this was one of the wildest years as far as fantasy playoff weeks. Like, it felt like, especially weeks, 15 and 16 were just insane.
Yeah.
Did you seem to notice a lot of kind of crazy variance in your leagues, things that you didn't expect to happen?
I think everybody had this experience of where they basically had 1 week in the playoffs for any of your playoff teams where they had a majority of their playoff teams playing one player that just went off.
Yeah.
And so week 15 was that week for me where basically 5 of my 8 teams were playing against Kyle Pitts. And I was so angry. We'll get into more of the depths of that. But yeah, it's one of those things that, like, the playoffs just had some either duds or they had some high scoring performances where it just completely either killed you or you benefited and rode the wave into the next round based off of one player's performance.
I feel like
Kyle Pitts and Puka Nacua.
Yeah,
but go ahead.
Like more than any past year that I can remember, there was more like 50s and 5s, all over the place. Like studs were scoring me 3 or 4 points, and then there'd be one guy that would score 40 or 50 points that just would carry a week. We saw.
Was it week 15 that Jahmyr Gibbs scored 49? Because I feel like the Kyle Pitts week kind of overshadowed that, where it was like scored 49 points, and it's crazy. It's just so much of that was happening this season.
Well, and then in week 16 you had Puka, and then week 17 you had the Derrick Henry game.
That killed me in our league that we share.
Yeah, and then the Bijan Robinson finisher on Monday Night Football. So there were some big ones. I think we're going to kind of go through and recap some of our favorite leagues. And, we both were able to win at least one league, but I think both of us maybe had more expectations than what we came away with. So we're going to talk about some of where we came up short, and then talk about. I think for me, like the teams. So I had 2 teams that won. We'll get into that, but I did not feel like my best teams won. So I think that a couple teams that I didn't think were going to win ended up winning, and then the teams that I thought were set up really well to win ended up falling short, and that's just kind of the luck of the draw of the fantasy football playoffs. But we'll get into that. Just kind of be, open and honest about how everything went, and you can kind of take a look at our teams and, see what you think, and we'll talk about how we're kind of setting up teams for next year as well. So Ben, go ahead.
Well, I was going to say one thing that, I think, and we'll talk about into some of the disappointment of how many teams you have carried into the playoffs.
Yeah.
And then how far you take them. And like you said, compared to the expectations of what you think it'll actually do and what ends up being the result, right? I had 8 teams that entered the playoffs this year. And then it ends up that I had 5 go into the final, and only one of those 5 came out on top.
Yeah. Yep, that's tough. I was in 20 leagues this year. I had 18 of them make the playoffs. Yeah. I had I have to look at it again. I think I had around a 70% win percentage across my leagues. Like one of the best years I've ever had. Had about half my teams and really all my teams in the leagues that I really cared about, except for one league. I had a bye. So a lot of really good teams, top end teams. So 20 leagues, 18 made the playoffs. And really, the only two I missed the playoffs were leagues I intentionally was tanking.
Yeah.
And of those 18, 16 made the semifinals. Of course, now part of that is helped by the fact that a lot of those teams are bye teams, so they made the semifinals right off the rip. But so 16 were in the semifinals. So at this point, I'm thinking, win at least 4 or 5 championships. Just the way things are set up, I'll win. Even if I just win 50% and then 50%, that should get me 4. But the semifinal week is where I was the rough week. So I went from 16 down to 6. And really, my 3 or 4 best teams lost that week, and we'll get into that a bit more here in a minute. And then went from 6 that made it to the finals. 2 of them won. So yeah, I mean, I'm happy to win 2. Never going to complain about winning fantasy championships, but definitely had higher hopes and was hoping to win more than that. But yeah, we'll get into more specifics. But Ben, you kind of mentioned your breakdown. Tell us about your team that ended up winning.
Yeah.
And
it was an exciting one because honestly, that was one that I was paying attention to very, very closely. The team itself, and actually I'll just go ahead and I guess show the team at this point. I believe there we go. All right. So this is actually in the FSAN David Montgomery Jersey League. And I think I was just most excited about this league to a lot of leagues. I think there's, definitely some leagues where it was like $50 league where I could win a significant portion of money, right? Like leagues where I could have covered easily all of my buy-in dues just on one win, right? And it's like, that wasn't really the part that was as exciting for me compared to what was at stake for this league, which was the Jersey League, right?
mm-hmm.
And if you guys know me, of course, I'm a huge Detroit Lions fan. Of course, I'm wearing the Stafford jersey tonight. But I also am a huge David Montgomery fan. He's so you look at the main players that you think about in fantasy. You think about Jahmyr Gibbs. You think about Amon-Ra St. Brown. Sam Laporta when he was healthy, Jared Goff, and at sometimes Jameson Williams with how he was especially showing up towards the end of the season. David Montgomery is often forgot about, and he is, in my opinion, one of the more important players in real life for the Detroit Lions, at least especially 2 seasons ago when they utilized him much differently. But I was really excited when I joined the league because, for me, I love collector's items, right? I also just like the bragging rights of being able to say I won that jersey from this league, right? And so breaking down the draft, I had kind of messaged back and forth with you, Austin, when I was drafting this team because this league had different scoring settings. And actually, while we're talking about this team, I'm actually just going to go ahead and get into the settings. This, of course, was brought to you guys by FSAN, which Tyler had put all these leagues together, and it was a great time. But let me see if I can find the league settings here.
Scoring settings.
Not used to working on the computer, so scoring settings. There we go. Yeah. So as far as rushing, you can see here, right? Normal 6-point rushing TD. Rushing for first down, 0.5 points. 2-point conversion, 2 points is normal. Rush attempts, 0.25 points. So it's point per carry at 0.25, which is pretty heavy. And then you get into some of these bonuses of 1 point for a 40-plus yard rush bonus, 40-plus yard rush TD bonus, 1, and then for 50-yarder plus is 2. And I believe there was more bonuses underneath here. And actually, yeah, so a player that has 20-plus carries gets 1 point. And then you have the rushing, like these points here for greater than 100 to 199 rushing yard game. And then 200 plus, right? So when you're looking at those things, you have to draft differently. And that's what I did to kind of help really solidify the level that this team was at. And the first pick that I had, I basically all 3 running backs go off the board first. Bijan, Jahmyr Gibbs, and I believe Devon Achane might have went 103. I had 104. And I was deciding, I had my choice. Jamar Chase was up. And normally in any regular redraft, he would have been the 101 starting at the beginning of the season, or at least behind Bijan, possibly as the 102. I decided to go Christian McCaffrey. And that's why Christian McCaffrey is honestly on the thumbnail for this episode, because he was a monster for me in that league this season. I mean, if you can imagine, again, he's putting up over 100-yard games, getting plenty of first downs and getting, north of 20 touches almost each game. And not only that, but you saw the receiving bonuses as well. He was putting up at some points, you could see in the championship week, he put up 43 points for me.
Mm-hmm.
And then, some weeks I basically almost got him up to almost 70 points, or somewhere just like 70 points. And it was just so nice to see all of those points drop for you on a given week, knowing that Christian McCaffrey's in there. I loaded up on running back between Bucky Irving, who was injured most of the year, but I was able to ride, everything else. And I had Drake London on this team too. So injuries were not an excuse, right? But Travis Etienne showed up in a big way. I mean, when you look at Travis Etienne, I believe he was the RB10 on the year. And he put up, RB10 in PPR formats. Just solid this year compared to what, we thought of Travis Etienne last year. A guy that you're going to talk about later, Austin, and Colston Loveland, because Colston Loveland was a breakout this year, and he has a strong future in Chicago, in my belief. George Pickens, Jackson Smith, and Jigba. If I go all the way up to the top here, Jacoby Brissett really carried the way for the Cardinals towards the second half of the season. I mean, the amount of crazy, stupid numbers he was putting up in attempts every week after Kyler was benched. But, beyond that, you look at, and even the bench filled out, right? You want to see, and actually that was another ad that I made sure that I had towards the end of the season, which was New Orleans adding their defense before the playoffs, because I knew they were going to have a strong run, right? But this was one of those teams that I felt so strongly about going in. 12-2 is the number 1 seed. And you know what? At the end of the day, I'm coming home with the David Montgomery jersey, and I'm excited to hang that up in the studio. So, what are your thoughts, Austin? I know that, like I said, you were involved a little bit in kind of the strategy or the game theory behind drafting this team.
Yeah, you know me. I love a wonky format, because I think that it really helps to separate the men from the boys when it comes to dynasty strategy, or I guess in this case, just fantasy football strategy, because it was a redraft league. But the just kind of being able to think outside the box, think about, okay, so what are all these extra bonuses? How are they going to play in? How does this change the ADP? And then I think factoring in, okay, so this is going to be running back heavy, but it's also going to favor running backs, especially that catch the ball, which obviously helps Christian McCaffrey even more than taking a guy like Saquon Barkley, who I think in a lot of redraft leagues, just kind of the chalk pick for you there would have been Barkley over CMC. So obviously, I don't know if you would have won the title if you had done that. So the stuff like that, I think, is really important. I'm going to get into, so it's interesting. You were in a running back jersey league. I was in a tight end jersey league. And we'll talk about that in a minute, how some of that scoring affected things. And interesting enough, spoiler alert, we both won our jersey leagues. So shout out FSAN for that. Dynasty Gambit acquitted itself well in the jersey leagues. But first, the first one I want to look at here is a best ball league I was in, hosted by the founder of FanCred, Mr. Armon. So I'm going to share here. Now, for some reason, Sleeper's desktop format for best ball leagues doesn't let you show the roster. It's frustrating. So I'm just going to go and show the draft. And then because this was a no roster moves league. So
hey, Austin, would you be able to view it on Dynasty Daddy?
Possibly so, but I think if I do it this way, because there was no moves, it'll be the same team I had the whole year. So I don't think we'll.
That's true.
Yeah. So we'll try this, and let's see. Yep. Let's do that. All right. So this was a league. It was 14 teams, and it was super flex. So there was a lot of quarterbacks going off the board, and I decided to kind of do a little zig when others zag. And my quarterbacks were Justin Fields, Jordan Love, and Sam Darnold. So you wouldn't think that looked like a championship team in best ball. But what I did is I kind of made up for it at the other positions. Jahmyr Gibbs and Christian McCaffrey at the top to start the draft. Obviously, those two guys absolutely crushed this year. I think there's a lot of McCaffrey championship teams. I'll put it that way.
There's one of Barkley with me.
Yeah.
We talked about earlier.
Right. Exactly. So, and then I mean, a couple of these guys, even Ladd McConkey, Travis Hunter weren't great picks, but Puka was good at the beginning of the year. My two tight ends, Jake Ferguson and Harold Fannin, got great values on both of them. They contributed really well. Alec Pierce and Quentin Johnston were kind of good steals. Sean Tucker had a couple games. In fact, he had one game where he scored like 40 points, which is perfect for best ball. You just want him in there when he's going to score. Trey Tucker also put up a bunch of big games. And so this team was in the running. It was really kind of a 3-horse race going down to the end, and I was able to win it. So I liked that team. It was fun. It was shout out to Armin for putting that together. We had a lot of fun with that. We may end up having him as a guest on here at some point during the off season. But that's that team. And then let me do this here. We'll share. I'll switch it out here. Let me pull up the other one and then I'll share it. So in the Jersey League, which is the other league that I won, I'll share my team there. Now, there was a few players that I dropped the last week because they were out. So I'll just talk about them. Like Rashee Rice, I had him on my team, but because he was going to be out for the last week, I picked up somebody else. But so most of the year I had Jared Goff as my quarterback. But Joe Burrow was dropped after his injury, so I picked him up and stashed him on the end of my bench and ended up playing him in the playoffs. And he had some good games for me. So the interesting thing about this league, we're talking about the odd scoring format. Let's see here.
I think you were on the right button. And then that's weird.
Not sure. Huh.
Because can you scroll down on that button?
I can't. Something. Okay. Well, there's massive bonuses for tight ends. I believe it was 2 PPR. There was a bonus for first downs. A bunch of like similar stuff to what you did. What's interesting though, and I think some people missed this in the startup, was that a lot of the bonuses were just receiving specific, and they weren't just tight end specific. So although tight ends were the highest scoring players, a lot of times they were scoring 40 points, depending on them. It also boosted a lot of wide receivers. And my plan going into the draft was to pick tight end, but literally I picked like 6th or 7th. And, Trey McBride, Brock Bowers, George Kittle were all gone. And so I didn't want to take TJ Hawkinson or something with the 7th pick. So I pivoted and went very like a strong wide receiver team. And my team I had CeeDee Lamb, JSN, Nico Collins, and Rashee Rice was kind of the core of my team. I think I also had Michael Pittman. And then I ended up getting Colston Loveland, Jawan Johnson, AJ Barner. So I had some decent tight ends later that actually ended up scoring up there in the top 10 tight ends. So it worked out pretty well. This league, I ended up being the 1 seed. It was super tight. I think there was 5 teams that were 9-5. Like here's, if you can see the standings here. Yeah, 5 teams finished 9-5. So it was very, very tight. Most of the year I was in 3rd or 4th place, but ended up just with points and tiebreakers and stuff. I ended up the 1 seed. But I did not really expect this to be a team that won. I think Binky there, he had one of the strongest teams all year. And I figured that he probably would win, but he ended up losing the semis. And then I was way behind in the finals. So going into the Sunday night football game. Well, first I'm going to talk about a mistake that I made that almost cost me. So there was those rumors going around that, the Bears players, I don't know if you remember this, the Bears players all had the flu and some of them might miss the game. DJ Moore was going to be a game time decision. So I had DJ Moore in my lineup and I ended up switching him out for Taysom Hill. Taysom Hill scored 0 points. So that was not good. I thought I just cost myself a championship on that. I'm down 29 points going into Sunday Night Football, and I only have Colston Loveland. Fortunately, there's a lot of good bonuses for tight ends, and Colston Loveland scored 32.4 points for me to be able to win this one. So that was a fun ride with Loveland, and he will always have a special place with me because he won me the Jake Ferguson jersey with a monster performance. So yeah, that's how that league turned out. I do think that it's sometimes in these formats where you have, like we talked about the running back one that you were in, where you have this juice scoring. If you're playing with good savvy managers, which I don't know if you were, I bet you were. I bet because a lot of smart people were in these leagues. But my league was a bunch of very savvy managers. And so sometimes going against the conventional wisdom, even in that format, works well because if everybody's kind of going one way, being able to go the other. Like we talked about one of our very first shows, kind of zigging when others zag. And I think it worked out pretty well, waiting on the tight ends, getting guys like Loveland, Juwan Johnson, and AJ Barner. I think I had Michael Mayer for a few weeks while Brock Bowers was out, stuff like that. So I was able to kind of find ways to stream the tight ends, but then have a big advantage at wide receiver. And then also Devon Achane was able to get, because of receiving, right? Because of those receiving first down bonuses and stuff like that, Achane actually got a lot of that as a running back. So he was kind of a workhorse for me. And then rotated between Quinjon Judkins and RJ Harvey at RB2. But yeah, that was a fun league. All right. Well, now that we've talked about the fun ones, let's talk about pick one league where you thought you were going to win, one of your best teams, and talk about how you came up short and what could have been.
Yeah. Well, I pulled this one right up for the stream, ready to go. And this is my home league, right? So we talk about leagues that mean something to us, right? The Dave Montgomery League meant something to me a little bit differently because I was excited about the possibility of winning something other than money, or just pride, but also the pride in a jersey, right?
Yeah.
But this one, it's mainly pride. Like, sure, it's like somewhere around we got like a buy-in, and then we also do like weekly bonuses. So it's basically split in our pot, that half of our buy-in goes to the total pot at the end, and then we get weekly bonuses based on highest scoring player and highest scoring team. So I played with these guys for 13 years. They're my college buddies, and there's just a lot of heartbreak in my 13 years because I've commissioned this league for that long. And I have won other leagues, right? I have been able to be successful in other ways, but somehow the bane of my existence is my college buddies, where it's just like none of these teams they've made it to the finals a couple times, but they never end up crossing over the hump. And so there's a trophy, right? And that's a huge thing, right? When you got a trophy in your league and there's something tangible that you can have your name on it, and you feel the pride when you see it. I've always wanted my name on the Ricky Bobby. That is the nickname of our championship trophy, right? Well, this team I felt so confident for. Funny enough, I was actually at a German fest with my family. And people are wondering, like, what the hell is he doing on his phone over there? And I'm like drafting my team because I couldn't. Everybody decided on a time, and my family was out doing something. Nobody wanted to reschedule, so I was like, fine, we're gonna do it at the German Fest. And I'm literally drinking beer, having a hot dog, and drafting my team. And I couldn't have been more pleased with the way that the draft went because of the way that the players fell. I ended up getting Ja'Marr Chase at the 102. I ended up coming back around with the next 3 rounds of going, Tet McMillan, or not Tet McMillan. I got him much later, like the 5th round. I got Drake London, 2nd round, Chase Brown in the 3rd. I ended up coming back later and, hang on one second, but just, you felt you have those drafts where you're just like, man, this team is going to crush it all season.
Yeah.
And then injuries ensue, right? So Drake London, I believe it was somewhere, but I believe either week 5 or week 8. That's when he had the knee injury, the PCL injury, and goes down for so many weeks. I had Rome Odunze, who was basically very fantasy viable for the first 4 weeks of the fantasy season, and then just kind of fell off. Marvin Harrison, a lot of expectations on Marvin Harrison in the 2nd year. Alec Pierce was a pickup later on in the season. That was a great pickup. Alec Pierce was a breakout this year. And I had Drake May, the QB1, honestly, in my mind, when it came from the beginning of the season, right? We know that QB1 would go on. I believe it's Josh Allen, if I'm not mistaken. And then, of course, Drake May at QB2. But man, he was having a magical season. So
Yeah,
I
might be
ended up going
Stafford, depending on
into
format.
what's that?
So depending on format, it might be Stafford. It depends on if like 6
Yeah,
point position. I think Stafford was one.
it's Stafford, right?
Yeah.
So 4 point, it's Josh Allen because of the rushing touchdowns
Mhm.
and the rushing. But it's one of those things that I ended up taking the season. It was kind of up and down, but I really started to hit a stride towards the end of the season, and I ended up like being in first place in week 14. And I'm feeling really good going into week 14. Like if I just keep going on, and either that or a loss below me keeps me in as the 1 seed, I can get a bye. Or no, the first 2 seeds, right? So I could lose essentially and feel okay that I'd possibly move down to the 2 seed if the right situation doesn't happen. And that is when like both teams behind me at 2 and 3 both win, because I was basically up there. I think I had a win on them, or no, I had most max or most PF, right?
Mhm.
So most points for. We're tied, but then I had a sizable cushion on PF. Ended up losing, and both of those guys won,
Mhm.
kicked me down to third place. And then who do I play week 1 of the playoffs as the 3 seed against the 6 seed?
Kyle Pitts.
Kyle Pitts.
Oh,
And it was like, are you kidding me? All right. Like, I think it was just a kick to the nuts, just how the end of the season went. That was like, I felt so strongly. Like, I felt the best about this team that I ever have. And you get those preconceived notions about your team. And as you and many other people have said in our community, it's playoffs are a crapshoot, right?
yeah.
Nothing is guaranteed. And I was actually listening to an episode by Adam Levitan the other day on what's the show? Established to Run. That's basically his show where he talks about a lot of DFS and other things like that. And he was talking about his success, and basically he said somebody asked him like, when you're getting the downs, downers in fantasy, like what makes you feel better about it? It's like knowing the fact that like it all just ends up coming up to chance, right? That you put yourself in the best position by winning so many games, but that like when it comes down to 1 week in the playoffs, that person on the other side of it has just as much of a shot at you as moving into the next round. Even though you might have been the higher seed. So it's kind of it's bittersweet in the sense that you can look back on the team and be like, I really love that team, but it definitely hurts when you're like, if I
Yeah.
would have moved on to the next round, I might have actually possibly gone on to win the championship.
Yeah. And it sucks extra when it's not a dynasty team and you don't get to run it back next year. Like that was just it's a team, a one and done team.
Yes.
Yeah. So yeah, we're a dynasty show. We haven't even talked about a dynasty team yet. But I am gonna talk about this next one. But real quick before I do, I'm gonna kind of touch on something you said there. I think it's super, like we've been talking about this really throughout the season, how important it is when you're trying to decide how you're going to pivot, whether you're going to try to be a contender or compete or rebuild. That it's a lot of it's about making the playoffs and then hoping things fall into place. You can make the playoffs as a 4 seed, 5 seed, and things just break right for you. On the flip side of that, you can have the biggest super team known to man and things just don't go well. I think the numbers have been run. I think somebody did a statistical analysis of fantasy football teams, and basically the best chance you can give yourself, you can build whatever super team you want, but somewhere between a 40 and a 45% chance is like the best you could do going into the playoffs. Like set yourself up where you've got a 40 to 45% chance to win the league. So like basically you put all the best players on one team, and that team's still only going to win about 40 to 45% of the time when you get to the playoffs. So it's really just about setting yourself up for success. And if you kind of play in a portfolio like we do, where you're in 15, 20 leagues, and we know some people that play in 50 plus leagues, the more, the more you play, right? The more you play, the more the variance kind of tends to even itself out and you're going to win some. So it's important to realize, put yourself in a good position in as many leagues as possible. But don't beat yourself up too much when you come up short, because there'll probably be some that you come up short in that you thought you had in the bag, and some that you're like, I didn't even expect to compete this year, that you end up winning. That'll happen, but it's just about putting yourself in position. And then the other thing is the playoffs are such a crapshoot that putting yourself in position to get a bye, although a lot of my bye teams lost, but still putting yourself in a position to only have to win 2 of those crapshoot weeks versus 3 makes a big difference, increases your chances. So keeping that in mind next year, like, all right, is this team have a chance to get the bye? Because it does eliminate a little bit of that. Like, for instance, with your team, like, you would have never had to face Kyle Pitts if you'd been able to finish first or second there in that.
Right.
Even though you had the most points, like those 2 guys getting you on record in the last week is the reason potentially you didn't win that title. So, yeah.
Right. One last point on my end to kind of piggyback off of your first point.
Yeah.
When we're talking about playing in a lot of more portfolios, not so much that you can't handle it, but like that you are able to get more exposure to to different players. It's diversifying is a great tool because you avoid the situation like we just talked about, where if you have a bunch of teams with Kyle Pitts on it, sure, you might win one week in week 15, but then what's that next week look like for you?
Right.
Or if you draft, a Romo Dunze in so many leagues, how many leagues did that keep you from winning getting to the playoffs? Because he was so inconsistent on the year with injury and also with rough play throughout the year. You want to diversify and you want to build up that portfolio in different ways to ensure yourself, hey, if this team doesn't get in, this team might have a good shot.
Yeah. Well, across those 20 leagues, I had 0 Puka Nacua, and that's part of the reason.
You might not own any after this.
That's part of the reason why I didn't win very many championships. I mean, I seriously, like, I faced him in, I think, 5 different semifinals. Yeah, and it was pretty. A couple of those it was Puka and Matthew Stafford stack that I was going against, and it was kind of over on Thursday night. This next, all right, so I'm going to go ahead and show this team. This was one of my favorite teams. I actually had 3 or 4 teams like this that were 1 seeds, great position, that lost in the semis. But this one is one of the toughest beats. So I'm gonna show this. All right, first of all, let's admire this.
Hang on, Austin. Let me preface this.
Yeah,
is this the team that had the one trade that you were just so upset about?
No. I'll mention that briefly after this. So all right, so this yes, all right, thanks for that reminder. I'll bring that up.
You're welcome.
So we had in this team, I want to do I might at some point in the offseason do a whole video on this team, because although it didn't win a championship, it's set up super well for the future. And this is the team I completely tanked last year and kind of did a 1-year turnaround. So it might be fun to kind of go over that process. But here we go. I
do think we should go over the league that we co-own too.
Yes.
I believe that.
Yes. Yeah. All right. So we Drake May, Christian McCaffrey, Marion Hampton, Jamar Chase, Nico Collins, Chris Olave, Trey McBride, Travion Henderson, Breece Hall, Dak Prescott. I also had Jackson Dart and Tyler Shuck for other quarterbacks. And then I also had Harold Fannin, Cortland Sutton. So, I mean, it's a very loaded team. I was the 1 seed, 13-1, lost week 14 in a close game to keep me from having a perfect season. So actually I ended up 13-2. Like, I lost my last 2 games of the season, the last game of the regular season and the semifinal game. That semifinal game. So I had 200 more points than everyone else in the regular season. I had about almost 400 points more than the guy I played in the semis on the season. I believe I went back and looked, and I would have beaten him every single week of the regular season and the other 2 playoff weeks. But the 1 week that I played him, I did not beat him. I lost by 1.3. I believe the score was 203 to 201.7 or something like that. First and second most points on the week. And I was in a very good position to win, but Travion Henderson got hurt in the first quarter. Like, if he had pretty much caught 1 more pass or had 2 more runs, I would have won the game. So losing him in the first quarter of that Sunday night football game cost me. And then, of course, I scored 220 points in the third place game, which was more than anyone else in the week. So that would have been a title if I had advanced. The good thing is this is a team that I can carry forward, and I am excited about. The other league, the one that Ben was referencing, which I'll mention briefly here, I had another pretty stacked team. Jonathan Taylor, Chase Brown, Rashee Rice, Trey McBride, Dak Prescott, and Jared Goff with the quarterbacks. I was the 1 seed going against a 4 seed that was probably the second best team. And it ended up working out where he was the 4 seed. And I hate when that happens. But Yeah, so he traded. He didn't have any quarterbacks because he had a couple injuries. I think Jaden Daniels was one of the starters, and Tua got benched for that week. So he had Jaden Daniels and Tua. So he had Mariota. So he was put Mariota in, but he didn't have a second quarterback. And he traded Kyle Monangai for Matthew Stafford right before the game. I was not happy about that because you go from him basically having to start Mariota and nobody else as a second quarterback to starting Stafford, who ended up scoring almost 40 points with a 6-point passing touchdown. I also, just to be a little petty, or I don't know, to torture myself, I don't know which, I went and looked because he actually had TJ Hawkinson in the Superflex prior to the trade. So I looked, and I ended up losing by about, I think it was about 25 points in the matchup, but Stafford scored over 30 more than Hawkinson did. So if that trade had not happened, I would have advanced. And then just like that other league, I did score the most points in the whole league to win my third place game, which of course doesn't mean that much. But yeah, so there's a few of those where it's like a couple things went against me in the semis.
Well, you said the one owner who traded Matthew Stafford for Kyle Monangai had made trades like this in the past.
Yes, there was a couple. There was one I remember last year. I think it was he traded away Christian McCaffrey for Zach Charbonnet straight up. Yeah. So that was a little
that's. I mean, at that point, it does look a little bit like collusion, right? Like you start to wonder, like, what was he thinking? Like, I mean, and clearly this is at a time when it's the most sensitive to the playoffs.
Yeah, I mean, his argument is he thinks Matthew Stafford's going to retire after the season. I don't think that's going to happen. But I know I don't know the guy who traded Monangai, but I know the guy who I played against, and I don't think it was collusion. I think it was just taking advantage of a guy that didn't know what he was doing. So,
which I mean, crappy move, but it's not illegal, but it's still crappy, right?
Yeah, I was frustrated by it, but it is what it is.
Right.
And I'll take the L and move on. I won the league last year in that league, and funnily enough, I won it as a 4 seed, and then I went go in this year as the 1 seed and don't win it. So just kind of
had that been an Empire League though, that
yeah,
you might have pushed for that.
right. I feel good about that's the thing is like even though a lot of these teams came up short, I got a lot of really good dynasty teams. So even the teams that finished second and third, I feel real good about next year. I ended up with, let's see, 3 second place teams and 8 third place teams. So still finishing in good position. I wish I'd had a few more championship teams. I actually won 0 dynasty leagues. So, but I won two redraft leagues, or 1 redraft league, 1 best ball redraft league. A lot of finishes, in the money, but no, championships for dynasty. But I'm set up really well for the future. We can talk more about some of these individual teams in future episodes. But,
I do want to go over our co-owned league.
Yes, let's do it.
Because that was another team that was in the finals.
Yep.
And man, this was a team we felt really confident about, right? I'm going to go from the top here, but this was a 1-year turnaround, right? Because I ended up picking up this is an orphan last year that basically it was bottom of the league. Somehow we ended up with the 101, whether it was our pick or someone else's pick, but we ended up either way having the 101. And it's so funny because I'll live to remember when this is why, I don't do this anymore because I learned my lesson. I was like, shoot, I should have consulted Austin about that. But when we had a trade where it was like, this guy traded us Drake May for the 101.
Yep. And
I was like, oh man, we could get a possible guy who's going to ascend to the next level for the 101. I mean, at that time we didn't know everything about Drake May that we know now, right? I think we had the profile that we needed to think that he was going to possibly ascend in the NFL, but not as fast. And you would text me, you're like, I was really excited about possibly picking Genty. I was like, oh, I'm sorry, Austin. I
so excited. Away from you. No, but honestly, yes. I think I said right after that, I was like, I do think the value is good in that trade. It's a 6-point passing touchdown league. We had Jalen Hurts, but we didn't have a second quarterback. So it made sense I just didn't have any Ashton Genty shares at the time, and I was excited to draft him there. But I'm glad we made the move. It helped us a lot in this league, and I ended up getting Genty in another league. But I think I mentioned this on another show where we talked about this this trade.
I just did want to say too, we traded we had the 102 as well, and we traded that up. Sorry, Mike, but we traded that up to Dynasty Dog Mike straight up for Devon Achane. And he ended up picking Hampton. So, it's one half dozen of another, but to me, Achane is better. I mean, but Mike won't admit that. But anyway, yeah, no, that was another big trade that we had made in the league that kind of shored up our running back. Anyway, go ahead, Austin.
Yeah, I was just saying, so I actually ended up in another league trading, another league where I had the 101. I traded it for Drake May as well. So I do like that move, and it worked out well in that league too. I ended up finishing second in that one as well. So yeah,
we're talking about the 101 in Superflex Dynasty startups this year.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see how that plays out. Whether it'll be another,
if it'll be ahead of Allen or behind.
Yeah, it's probably going to be Jeremiah Love, and so will people that need a quarterback? Will people that need a quarterback trade away an opportunity to draft Love for some up and coming quarterbacks? Like for instance, Jackson Dart. Like, would you trade the 101 for Jackson Dart? That's probably a trade that people are going to be considering this offseason. So, yeah.
It's not too crazy to think about, considering the exact reason we did it for Drake May, right?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, but this team was good. I mean, we were the number 1 seed. We were in the championship game, and we lost a close one.
Yeah, and it was on the heels of a Derrick Henry week. So I think that really put us in an uphill battle, because I felt like our lineup was looking good. You see projections, and while we all should know that projections don't mean anything in real life fantasy, it's that, like, you get this false sense of confidence because you're like, I'm in the green. I'm 65% favored. I should feel good going into this week. And that's what makes the championships hurt more. Don't show me the projections.
Oh, yeah. You should see when I was in those 16 semifinals, I was scrolling on Sleeper, and all I saw was green all week going into the games. And then suddenly they're all red. But that's how it goes.
Yep. So, Austin, man, it was a fun episode. Honestly, I think this was one of my favorite episodes so far. Like, I think we were just able to go over some of our favorite teams, really, really talk some of what makes us happy in fantasy, right? Which is competing for championships and the opportunity to just continue on the next season with good teams and just build those friendships and partnerships. And I wanted to close out the episode, as much as it's hard for me to share, and starting this pod back in, well, technically this pod back in March, right? March, April. And then really I partnered up with Austin sometime around September, October of 2024. And we have done some real fun things with this show, starting off from the Super Dynasty Brothers. Super Dynasty Bros, and building that into the Dynasty Gambit with FSAN. But for me, I told Austin, with my lifestyle right now, with where I'm at in my life, I'm having to shift it. I'm having to change my priorities, and it's tough because I love doing this. But at the same time, for me and for you guys, I'm still putting out content, but I'm no longer going to be a co-host on the Dynasty Gambit. Right. And I'm handing over, I'm letting Austin keep the torch, right? Because Austin always had his hand on the torch with me. But at this point, I'm taking my hand off, and I gotta kind of change a little bit right now. Right. And this is not goodbye. This is just essentially kind of a break, because right now I know things are going to be different by the end of even this year. That, right now, with where my family's at, with the age of my kids, it's tough to schedule and plan putting together podcasts with Austin and working together on being able to do those things.
Yeah.
But for me, I really have found a lot of passion in writing, and I was kind of shown that this season. And I will be continuing to write for I am the co-founder and will stay the co-founder of the Dynasty Gambit. That's first and foremost.
Yeah.
And you are in great hands with Austin, because I trust Austin completely with everything I have on this show, as well as the leagues we share. And I've been so lucky to build a community with him that has brought a lot of you to our show, and into our lives, right? So, for me, I'm excited at the future, and I'm excited at the future of the Dynasty Gambit, because I know Austin has big plans, and he'll definitely get into more of that as the more shows you guys go on, right?
Yeah.
But this is not the end of me and the Dynasty Gambit. This is just a continuation, and I'm beginning to do more stuff with my time, with the ability to write more when I'm able to, right? Because I'm able to chase around my kids and also finish an article, versus I can't really do that live on a podcast. I mean, I did it once with Addy and it sucked. Just kidding. But I can't say any more from the bottom of my heart that this show has meant everything to me. And Austin, you are a great friend, man. I appreciate your time, and what you have to bring to this space is important. So absolutely continue to do what you're doing, and I am going to be supporting you here all the way.
Thanks, Ben. I really appreciate it. I've really enjoyed doing the show with you. I'd love to continue having you, like we talked about, like infrequent guest spots, and have you as part of the show. We're gonna continue with the Dynasty Gambit. I got a bunch of stuff planned for this next year. We're gonna have some rotating guests, rotating potential co-hosts. We're gonna have there'll probably be some videos I shoot by myself, but we're gonna keep getting into Dynasty strategy, and it should be fun. We'll keep it with FSAN, and yeah, I mean, Ben, like we got leagues we run together. We got the Discord that we're gonna keep going together. That's been a ton of fun. And then, obviously you're still, co-creator of the Dynasty Gambit, and we'll still be part of everything we do. And obviously it's not goodbye. We'll have you on. Just not going to be every single show. So I appreciate you and appreciate all the work you've done. And yeah, you've been a great friend to me as well, and will continue to be. So yeah, not goodbye, but it's just a kind of a shift in how we're going to do things. And we're excited for you guys to come along with that into 2026. And then hopefully we'll do a show this time next year talking about how we each won about 15 championships. How about that?
Well, yeah, absolutely, man. That I'm always here, and I you guys will still see my face. It just might not be as often.
Yeah, good stuff. Well, appreciate you, Ben. Appreciate everybody for listening. Appreciate FSAN for continuing to support us. Got big things planned for 2026. Ben, thank you so much for everything you've done. Get us up and going, and looking forward to seeing you continue to do big things in the space and with the Dynasty Gambit. So appreciate you guys watching, and have a happy new year.